we have the Apprentice. You also know this little guy as the Swordmaster. So give me a second. Because talking for an hour has a little bit of a toll. All right, the Apprentice. Have fun. Yeah, I'm trying to, but reading all this, you can really fuck your throat up. But anyways, so the Apprentice has 3, which is the Swordmaster, as you know it. 3 hard specializations, every other class we've seen so far. The first one is called Commander. It is a tank. Second one is Swordmaster. It's a DPS. And the last one is Lore Master, which is a defensive support. All right, we're going to start with the Commander. Let's see what they've done to this class. Balance, we're going to be the mechanic for this class. As always, pretty much passive. Abilities generate 1 of 4 sigils: Eldrazi, Hoeth, Vaal, or Asurian. Each sigil will last for 15 seconds until used. Abilities gain augmented effects whenever a sigil is consumed. Alright, so they are generated by the abilities in the last 15 seconds, and they stay until they're used. So you don't have to constantly generate them on, no, the last 15 seconds. So you're going to have to keep them up. So this sounds a little bit more like the usual Knight, Chosen, Aura rotation. So from just reading the first ability, we can see that the Swordmaster is no longer going to have, theoretically, this path it used to have, where we'll see if I'm right or not. You know, skill A leading to B, B leads to C, C leads to D, and if you don't have B, you can do C, and if you don't have C, you can do D. If it gets parried, you fuck, you go backwards. Let's see if it works that way with the generation of sigils. Heaven's Blade, no cost, instant, blade enchantment, basic attack. So this is your basic attack. It deals 4% melee attack power and 30 elemental damage to target enemy, generates 22 action points. Asurian, gain an enchantment for 10 seconds. Whenever you attack an enemy, you will apply a 6-second affliction that deals 5% spell attack power and 47 elemental damage every second. Vaal, gain an enchantment for 10 seconds. Whenever you attack an enemy, you will apply a 6-second enchantment that will absorb 11% restoration power and 155. So you can only use 2 here, either a shield or a dot. Dragon's Talon, also instant, Sigil of Asurian. Dispel 1 enchantment from target enemy. If you use a Hoeth as well, also dispel 1 blessing. Eldrazi also deal 21% melee attack power and 280 elemental damage. I don't know how that is. Oh, I see how that's going to work. Okay, so you have to have the sigils of Hoeth, Eldrazi up and Asurian to use this skill. So you need to have those 3 sigils active. And then when you press that skill, it will take all 3 sigils out and do 3 effects. If you only have 2, it will do 2 effects. If you have 1, it will do 1. And if you don't have an Asurian, you can't do the skill altogether. Oh, the blue one is the one they generate. Okay, so this one will generate Asurian. Okay. Okay, so the blue is the one that generate, but we're going to need a Hoeth and an Eldrazi to do those ones, to do the extra stuff. So we can use this, dispel 1 enchantment, generate the Sigil of Asurian, and if we have the other 2, we can also dispel the blessing. Okay, I see how that works. Okay, now it's a little bit more clear with the blue stuff. Okay. Quick Incision. This one generates a Seal of Eldrazi, applies ensnared and momentum to target enemy. Ensnared reduces the movement speed by 30% for 16 seconds. Momentum prevents the application of ensnared. That momentum basically is the debuff. So with this one, so let's see. Okay, let's see another couple more skills, and I get my head around this for a little bit. Guard. I'm going to read this for the people who are new on the Interbellum upcoming server, because Guard works a hell of a different. So if you're going to guard somebody, you apply guard to the target groupmate. While you are within 30 feet of them, they will gain 50% of your armor, resistances, and block. You will lose these stats for the duration and for 5 seconds after the effect is broken. So if you're going to guard somebody, you give them half of your stats, basically. Your resistances, your armor, and your block. Since we're talking about a tank specialization, for those that don't know or the new, block, Interbellum, does not require a shield. It is a statistic, and every single class, healer, tank, DPS, melee, or range, you can all block. Tanks, however, having a shield, they get more of that, but everybody can block. This is why when you're guarding somebody, you give them 50% of your block. They don't need a shield, so you're protecting them. Ether Dance. This one generates a sigil of all. It's a 3-second channel. Deals 22% melee attack power and 312 spiritual damage every second to target enemy. If you also have the following sigils, Aldrazor, your channel interval is reduced to 0.6 seconds. If you also have a Hoth sigil, channel interval is increased to 2 seconds and the channel duration is increased to 6. For the duration, the target has its outgoing damage and damage reduction reduced by 10%. I can tell you from now, I will never play a Swordmaster. I will never play an Apprentice in the Commander mode, any of the classes, any of the specs, because it's just too much for me to remember. Etheric Dissipation. This requires a sigil of Hoth. Applies silence and inevitable to the target. So this is your silence. Ensorcelt Blow. Ensorcelt. I'm learning new words here. New words. Ensorcelt Blow. This requires a sigil of Aldrazor. Deal 21% melee attack power and 280 elemental damage to target. Pretty straightforward. Cerulean Shield. Gain an enchantment for 8 seconds. You will absorb 22% restoration power and 298 over the duration. Melee. Okay. So, I mean, the restoration power is for healers. This is a tank. Melee, restoration. I don't know. I'm always looking at those things a little bit more. So the tactics here are almost the same as we've seen on the Archmage. We'll run through them anyways. So Centurion training is the same, where you have 33% chance whenever you deal direct damage to an enemy to apply one of these debuffs, which they will last 6 seconds. They do not refresh. And they will either deal 4% melee attack power and 56 impact damage, or 6% range attack power and 80 piercing, or 10% spell attack power and 134 spiritual damage. So pretty much one for every type of class. So it's randomly assigned. Form the ranks. It's if you whenever you use your basic attack, and every other groupmate that has the same tactic as you equipped will gain 1 stack of purity and a 4-second buff, which for the duration they will gain 450 penetration and 450 sagacity. Potent enchantments. Whenever you strike an enemy with a blade, this is different. With a blade enchantment active, you will deal 6% spell attack power and 77 spiritual damage every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. This effect does not refresh. Just to remind you guys, what we mean by enchanted blade, we mean that when you use your basic attack here with Heaven's Blade, which is an enchantment, depending which sigil, you know, with the Vow of the Asurian, you have a different one. One is a shield, the other one is a dot. So if you haven't enchanted it, because you did have your sigils active, then if you also have this tactic, you will be dealing the extra damage. Bound in Blue, the 4th basic tactic, the one you start with. Cerulean Shields now applies the absorb to groupmates within 65 feet of you. Ramasee question, Cerulean Shield now applies to the absorb to groupmates within 65 feet of you. Does that include us, or this is the trade-off? Instead of it being applied to us, it's applied to everybody else in the group. So the tanks here, the commander will equip one-handed swords and shields. Hedgehog. It's morale 1. All group mates within 100 feet gain 3 stacks of enhanced block. Champion challenge is the one you know. You apply a debuff on the target enemy and yourself for 10 seconds. Movement speed is reduced to 0. You immobilize them. You are your own group mate. Okay. Distracting Bellow. Up to 48 enemies within 30 feet of you receive a debuff for 10 seconds that cannot benefit from cover. Now, this is the morale you got to use before you use your Zerg Busting abilities. So you got to use this in the front line. Distracting Bellow, morale 3. Then you can do the Zerg Busting abilities. Everything pretty much is a combo. Immaculate Defense, morale 4. Group mates within 100 feet gain 25 stacks of a buff for 20 seconds. Each stack grants 3% damage reduction. So that is 60%. 25 stacks, so 75% damage reduction. A stack is removed each time they're attacked by an ability. 4 additional stacks are removed if the ability is a single target. Now let's see more specifically what we get when we play a commander. Balanced defenses. Whenever you consume a sigil of Val or sigil of Azurian, all group mates within 100 feet of you have their damage reduction increased by 6% for 5 seconds. So it has 2 ranks. So you can make that up to 6% for 5 seconds. Also, in regards to the restoration power thing you stated, notice this class deals magic damage as melee, which means willpower is a good primary stats for them to gain magic resist penetration, sagacity, so they will have higher restoration power. Yeah, to be honest with everybody, I am a little bit lost with the new stats. Because we say melee attack power, but honestly, because I have a very bad memory and I'm really going to have to do a lot of reading over and over and over again until they stick in this little brain of mine. We say melee attack power, and you know, up to this point, due to all the previous MMOs that I've played, you're thinking strength, but I think here I'm going to have to learn all the new stuff because there's new words and new way things are working. So when I see on a tank and it says melee attack power for your damage, and then it says your shield is on restoration power, I'm like, you know, what's going on here? However, there are no useless stats on Interbellum, and that means that, for example, melee attack power, let's say you need strength, right? So if you put 1 point of strength, you take 1 DPS, right? For every point kind of thing, for the example. But because all the stats on the gear are random, and you put a piece of gear that has, let's say, 2 strength, then it has 1 ballistic, which is pretty much range, as you know, in this gear, and then it has 1, I don't know, spell power, right? So you don't have something better, you put it on, so you take 2 from the strength for your melee, but then the other 2 are not useless because ballistic is not going to give you 1 melee attack power, it's going to give you 1 range, but it's also going to give you half, right? Half a point for your melee, and the spell is also giving you half for your melee, while the strength is going to give you half for your spell power and this and that. So you're going to have a little bit of everything. Of all the stats, because they're not useless. So you don't have something better to put on, you put it because it still gives you on melee. Even if it says the restoration power, it still gives you something on melee, it still gives you something on ranged until you have the beast gear. Normally you would take strength weapon skill to deal more damage, right? Well, instead of weapon skill, you want willpower because you do magic damage instead of physical damage. Yeah. I mean, it's for me, Ramasee and everybody. I'm a very slow learner. I need to put my hands on this, put a lot of gear on, and reread all the skills more times. This is the first time I'm reading the skills, and I am having a little bit of trouble, you know, for them. Sipping through my skull and working on them. So I will say some silly things as we go along, but I'm sure when the server is up and I can have my hands on the classes, start working on things, it will become second nature as with every other game. So let's get back on this after this little parenthesis there. So balanced defenses. Whenever you consume a sigil of Vol or a sigil of Asurian, all group mates within 100 feet of you have their damage reduction increased by 6%. So they receive basically 6% less damage for 5 seconds every time you use your sigils to do something. Stabilize is a pretty standard tactic for pretty much every tank. Is the one that increases your mass by 1. Mass controls your CC capabilities. How is it for you to be CC'd, or how is it for you to CC other people? Dazzling Blade requires a sigil of Hoyth, applies a 6-second affliction to target enemy, deals 9% spell attack power and 105 spiritual damage every 2 seconds. Then we have some more stats here. Improved basic attack, passive with 4 ranks. Your basic attacks will deal 75% more damage. I'm going to max this one out. Your basic attacks will deal 300% additional damage. Holy shit. Holy shit! 300%. No cost, no cooldown, 8 feet range, instant cast. The basic attack deals 4% melee attack power and 30 elemental damage to target. You generate 22 action points, and you can do that plus 300%. If you have the right sigil on, you get the augment for shielding or for dots. This is one of the hardest classes to understand right off the rip, because it's usually modified. The 1, 2, 3 system, the way this way is more modular. Yeah, I know. I need time. I think players that play Swordmasters and other versions of the game will also need time. Morale 1. You generate all 4 sigils. There we go. That's a way. I don't know how fast they're going to be building morale, but definitely having a morale 1, which is the easiest to build up, to give you all 4 sigils, it might come very handy. Val's Buffer. It's a tactic. Whenever you consume a sigil of Vol, gain an enchantment for 8 seconds. For the duration, you also absorb up to 16% restoration power in 216 in general. That's the amount of damage plus the restoration power. So basically, every time you use a sigil of Vol, you also gain a shield. Hoyth's Advancement, another tactic. Whenever you consume a seal of Hoyth, up to 3 group mates within 100 feet gain 1 stack of Enhanced Intelligence. Ooh, buffing the casters, huh? Agility Bedazzle, passive. Increase the duration of Dazzling Blade by 2 seconds. Ramasee, I think you might need to have a look on the builder. I think you're missing a little bit of programming here. It has 2 ranks, but it's not giving me the ability to click it. Do I have to get this one first? Okay, I have to get this one first. Okay. I have to get Dazzling Blade, then we can pick the the increased duration here. Okay, got it. See, I found it. Wounds, and then we go to Distract. 40 action points, insta cast, jumps the target for the next 3 seconds, interrupting the next ability cast. And if we do get it, we also unlock the tactic called Improve Distract, which says Distract will now work up to additional 23 enemies. Enemies has a spelling mistake within 20 feet of the target, as long as those targets do not have cover. So you get an AoE interrupt, I suppose, for the next 3 seconds, interrupting the next ability. The range is 65 feet. It's a pretty considerable range. Yeah, it says enemies on the tactic Improve Distract. Wall of Darting Steel, morale 2. You gain 100% dodge for the duration. It's a 6-second channel, so you can. I suppose you're gonna have to. I don't know if it's mobile. I think not, because it usually says mobile skill, cast while moving. So you stand still and you get 100% dodge. Next line. Impeccable Reactions, career tactic. Whenever you dodge an attack, all group mates within 100 feet of you will gain 100% block chance against the next attack made against them within 3 seconds. Oh, there's a combo there. You can use your morale too. 100% dodge for the duration, and then you can have the tactic where people are shooting you, range are shooting you, you have 100% dodge, and then everybody in your group, 100 feet around you, they gain 100% block for the next attack, make them within 3 seconds. So it's a nice combo. Of course, it only lasts for one attack, but still, it's 100% mitigation for one attack, which could be anything. Blade Shields, passive. Your absorb effects from Heaven's Blade, Cerulean Shield, and Volt's Buffer will deal 5% spell attack power and 89 elemental damage to any enemy that attacks. So you get a reflect, and that you can put that 4 times. Wow, and the damage goes up to 33% reflected when they hit any of your shields. Phoenix Wing. It requires a Sigil of All, deals 8% melee attack power and 115 spiritual damage up to 9 enemies within 30 feet of you. Eldrazi Sigil applies a 9-second affliction to each enemy hit, which deals 3% spell attack power and 12 spiritual damage every 3 seconds. Hoeth interrupts each target hit. Oh, Phoenix Wing, I like it. So you're going to generate a Sigil of All. And if you have a Hoeth up, you can interrupt. So it's another interrupt along with distract. So it's 2 interrupts. Additional to the damage and all the other things. Engage, passive, 3 ranks on this one. Enemies that you deal direct damage to will have their outgoing damage reduced by 2% for 5 seconds. We put all the points on this. Anybody with damage, their outgoing damage is reduced by 6% for 5 seconds. I mean, 6%, I don't know, it may not sound a lot. But I'm assuming this might be stackable from different tanks. So you have like 2 knights. That could be 12%. That gives you a reason to actually kill the tank and don't leave it last, because now tanks seem to have a lot more things to do. And some of the previous tanks we've also seen, you need to specifically single target ability hit them. So you reduce their effectiveness. So if you don't hit them, they reduce everybody's incoming damage on their group. If you don't hit them, they keep buffing them with extra damage. So somebody from the attackers, whatever side that is going to have to specifically use single target abilities every now and then on the tank. That's taking pressure off something else. So tanks now are not to be ignored in this version here. Moving on, Stopping Strikes, Dazzling Blade, Heaven's Blade, Phoenix Wing will apply stacks of reduced spiritual resistance and reduced elemental resistance whenever they deal periodic damage, whenever they have a dot applied to them through the use of the other sigil. Hold the line! Hold the line! Passive. Passive? Groupmates within 50 feet behind you have cover from all enemies up to 100 feet in front of you. Cover reduces the damage of area of effect attacks by 25% in addition to providing immunity to some effects. The some effects is Azoric Basting abilities. So groupmates within 50 feet, groupmates within 50 feet behind you. So if I remember, behind you is 180. I think it's 180 angle behind you. They gain cover from all enemies up to 100 feet in front of you, which I think is, again, 180. So positioning is going to be crucial, because you can be 181, like slightly behind the tank. All right, so 180 basically is wherever my hands extend, basically. People in front of me and people behind me, but somebody just happens to go like a little bit behind you, you can really screw people up with Zerg Basting abilities. I can see how this is, because I've never thought of it this before, but positioning is not just about, you know, you checking, okay, I'm here, my guys are behind me, the other guys in front of me, that's cool. This also brings into play group tactics. Hey, Cause, how you doing, buddy? Group tactics in the sense that, I mean, usually you have all the tanks at the front. You got like the DPS, the melee DPS close to tanks, the range a little bit further back, and the healer is way back at the back, which is no longer going to be the thing here. But tactics as to things you see for you guys that play like Warhammer Total War, where you have people hidden in the forest and you flank them from the sides. I think this is going to be important because the tank is going to be facing the mass, And if they want to have cover, they're going to have to turn and reposition, not just turn, but not just turn, but actually move and reposition in front for the incoming attack, and then they leave the other flank open. It's going to be crazy, the positioning, if people actually start using tactics and communicating as they did 5-10 years ago through Discord and stuff like that. It's going to bring a lot of difficulty into the game regarding tactics, mobility, and communication. Good to hear it, Cause. So that's the one there. Hold the line. That's the one we read. Redirect force. Passive. 2% of enemy spells, not skills and abilities, spells, that target group mates within 30 feet of you are redirected to you, but they deal twice as much damage to you. 6%. So if you max it out, oh, hold on, it goes all the way up to 5, does it? Okay, let me just take some more points. I want to see how much. So 10% of enemy spells that target group mates within 30 feet of you are redirected, but they're dealing double damage to you. Now that I'm looking at this, Archmage, Healer, Tactic, your defensive target gets healed 35% more, and you only lose 10% of your overall healing. So if he's taking 10% of the spells coming to your group, you want to keep him as your defensive target and give him that extra 35%. So he's pretty much defending every single person in your group from any spell. Not skills and abilities, spells coming that way. So now I know why the Archmage gets that one. Yeah, cause I'm good, dude. I'm good. Got a new job. I finished early. I can do my streams. I'm kind of very happy. Things are going great so far. Adept movement, another tactic. Your absorb effects from Cerulean Shield, Eagle's Protection, Heaven's Blade, Whispering Wind, and Vol Buffer grant you 10% dodge. We're going really defensive here. Wings of Heaven, that's morale 3. Gain a debuff for 5 seconds, which reduces your mass by 8. Leap forward and apply Ensnared to all 9 enemies within 20 feet. That means you movement speed reduced by 30% for 16 seconds. It's exactly the same one the Archmage has as a morale 3. Masochist. Oh god, this name sometimes, like, I'm a tank, hit me. I'm a Masochist, hit me, hit me. Renown tactic. Whenever you're attacked while your guard is active, when you're guarding somebody, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. Oh my god, this is like the best tactic ever. Like, seriously, this is the best tactic. You know what, Ramasee? You gotta put this tactic to every single tank. Because now they're actually gonna guard. Even on pugs, they're gonna guard just to get the morale points, the adrenaline. So, you guard somebody, good at your job, you get rewarded with more morale, you can do more damage and have more fun, guard people. Which also, I will say this again, I want to see how speed is going to affect. They have it? Okay, because, you know, I don't remember. They all have the tactic. Okay. I want to say how speed is going to affect the game, because some classes have different speeds. So not everybody walks or runs, put it any way you want. The same way, a lot of them have speed buffs, especially melee classes. So I want to see how careful the melee is going to start being in order to stay within 30 feet of the tank, which is going to be much fucking slower, and it won't be able to keep up with them. And I have a feeling that without some classes, that without the tank, whether it's a main tank or a non-standard tank, I think they might melt pretty freaking quickly. Put in your mind a Slayer on full rage kind of thing. I think that's how that's going to go. And I want to see how speed's going to affect that. There's a lot of things to look out in this game, at least on paper so far. Blessing of Heaven. It requires a Sigil of Azurian, dispel 1 affliction from target ally. If you have a Sigil of Hoeth, also dispel 1 cripple. If you have a Sigil of Eldrazi, target gains 8-second enchantment. For the duration of that enchantment, they will be healed for 6% restoration power and 68 each time they take a hit from an enemy with an ability. Again, I'm going to say, read the tooltip specifically from an ability, not a basic attack, not a spell, just an ability. The White Bulwark. Passive. All your absorb effects are 6% more effective. Come on, give me more points, Ramasee. More points. What is this shit? More points. So, moving on. Turbulent Winds. Career tactic. Whenever you cast Dragon's Talon or Blessing of Heaven, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. In addition, each enemy you hit with Unleash the Winds will have their outgoing damage reduced by 20%. 20? Are you insane, Dev? For 10 seconds. Okay. Unleash the Winds. Morale 4. That's why it's 20%, because you gotta use a morale 4. Okay, check. Up to 96 enemies within 20 feet of your location, of the location you select, are knocked straight up in the air. All right, I probably have asked this one before, but I'll ask again, Ramasee. So when you say they are knocked up straight in the air, I'm assuming they just jump up. So that is like an AoE interrupt, right? It doesn't do anything else. The character just jump up as a broken pool or Return of Reckoning. They just go up instead of anywhere else. And it's just an AoE interrupt, isn't it? Gaston Wind. Basic attack deals 4% spell attack power and 30 spiritual damage to target enemy. Generates 22 action points. If you have a sigil of Asur, knocks up 9 enemies within 30 feet of the target away and applies immovable. That's a debuff. This effect can only happen once every 20 seconds. If you have a sigil of Vow, applies knockdown and unstoppable to target enemy. This effect can only happen once every 20 seconds. Knockdowns prevent all control of your character for 3 seconds. Immovable prevents application of rooted. Okay, these are the debuffs. The jump up to the air, yes. The main things that's not written there is the gravity modifier on the knock up is low. So they stay in the air longer than normal knockback. Ooh. Okay. Can they cast stuff while in the air? Like, let's say on Return of Reckoning, if I'm pulled, I'm in the air, I lose my block, I lose my dodge. Sorry, I lose my block, I lose my disrupt, I lose stuff like that. But I can still cast like my landmine or stuff like that. Insta cast only, okay. Okay, makes things weird. Flames of the Phoenix is a Zerg Basting ability for the commander on the Apprentice, of the Apprentice in the Commander Heart specialization. I'll get used to these things. It's the same one as the Archmage, so I suppose they have the same one. Deals 10% spell attack power and 50 elemental damage every 0.5 seconds, that's twice a second, up to 48 enemies within a 30-foot area you select. So you get a little circle on the floor you can select. Each time an enemy is hit by this ability, they gain a stack that increases damage they take from this ability by 25% for 1 second. This ability deals no damage to targets that have cover. We've explained cover a little bit earlier. So, tank with a little bit of heal and a lot of shields. Thank you, Cause. Luck is appreciated. Always helps a streamer. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. So this is the first heart specialization of the Apprentice. You know him as the Swordmaster, the Commander, and it's a tank. Let's go and see the DPS form, right? Called the Swordmaster. The mechanic is the same with the balance, and you require the 4 sigils of Eldrazi, Hoeth, Vol, and Asurian. Your basic attack still remains Heaven's Blade. Dragon Talon is the same. Dazzling Blade, you get it as a basic skill when you start instead of the second line of the specialization on the tank. This one requires the Sigil of Hoeth, applies a 6-second affliction to target enemy, deals 9% spell attack power, and 105 spiritual damage every 2 seconds. A new skill you get is Crushing Advance. It's a spell, no cost, instant, 50 seconds cooldown. Gain an enchantment for 5 seconds. For the duration, gain 20% movement speed. If you have a Sigil of Vow, gain 50% outgoing damage as well. And if you have an Asurian sigil, movement speed increase is now 40%. If you have all the freaking sigils, woohoo! Ether Dance, same as before, Sigil of Vow deals 22% melee attack power, 312 spiritual damage. If you have Eldrazi, channel interval is reduced to 0.6 because it's a 3-second channel, this one. If you have a Sigil of Hoeth, channel interval is increased to 2 seconds and the channel duration is increased to 6. And for that duration, the target has his outgoing damage and damage reduction reduced by 10%. So it becomes really powerful like that. Eagle Flight. 1.5 second cast, you need the Sigil of Hoeth, deal 30% spell attack power and 420 spiritual damage to target enemy. 1.5 second cast time. Is it me or whatever a skill says spiritual damage always does more than any other, like that corporeal or Igor or any other? Encircled Blow. Sigil of Eldrazi is produced. Sorry, it doesn't require it. It produced it. Blue means it creates that sigil. Deal 21% melee attack power, 200 elemental damage to target enemy. Cerulean Sealed. Gain an enchantment for 8 seconds. You will absorb 22% restoration power and 298 over the duration. So this is the DPS form of the Swordmaster. So we have speed buff. All right. Damage reduction, good damage output, it's a DPS of course, and an absorption shield so far. Centuries of Training, we've seen it. Form the Ranks, we've seen it. Potent Enchantments, we've seen it. I think it's exactly the same as the tank one. Bound in Blue, exactly the same. Your Cerulean Shield now applies the Absorb to group mates. So I think this is a pretty standard one. But this is good because you can have your tank Swordmaster, Apprentice, the tank Apprentice on the commander spec, and have an Apprentice Swordmaster, the DPS, and they can both run Bound in Blue, and whenever they both use the Cerulean Shield, so the DPS will give shields to the group, and the tank will give shields to the group. Now, this may reduce potentially the damage of the DPS, but if you need to, you can change tactics in combat, so you have different setups. So if you're under pressure and you guys are going down, you need something to stabilize and hold until some healers are resurrected. I suppose switching to giving extra shields as a DPS, it wouldn't be a bad thing, since that might give you a chance to survive, but if you're down, you're just going to die. Of course, a lot of people will choose to die because, like, I'm a DPS, I don't do that. So the Swordmaster yields 200 swords, while the tank version of the commander yields 100 swords and shields. The morals we have here, I think, is pretty much the standard DPS we've seen before in other classes. Serve Nerve, which is morale 1, deal 50% melee attack power and 400 piercing damage to the target. Broad Swings, morale 2, you gain a buff for 10 seconds. Your single target abilities will target 2 additional enemies within 20 feet in front of you. Force of Will, morale 3, all group mates within 100 feet gain a buff for 10 seconds. Action point costs are reduced by 75% for the duration. And morale 4, Frenzied Slaughter, all group mates within 100 feet gain a buff for 15 seconds, plus 40% outgoing damage and 50% reduced cooldowns for the duration. Alright, let's go and see what else we actually get. These are what you start with at this point. First line, we got our typical extra stats that we can put this. And balance accuracy passive. Whenever you consume a Sigil of Vol or a Sigil of Asurian, you will gain 10% outgoing damage for 5 seconds. This one has 4 ranks, so you can take the outgoing damage all the way up to 10. Hey Cole, how you doing, buddy? Are these changes that are live from a recent patch, or are these career builders displaying future changes? Neither. If you read my title, it says Interbellum. This is not Return of Reckoning. This is Interbellum. It's the future, which is not online yet. We're just looking how the class is going to look like when the server comes online. This is they're taking a completely different path, and they have reworked every single class. These are the paths, which you can only pick one. You don't mix and match on this one. You just pick one and you play it. So I'm just going through as a review for whenever the server comes up, so we know what to expect, because it's a totally different game with different mentality and a totally different direction. Then we get a tactically footed. your base movement speed is increased by 15%. Your mass is decreased by 1. I think every single melee has this one, so they run faster. But there is the chance of being CC'd a lot easier. Fast flight, it's a passive. Eagle flight is now instant and instant cast and deals 20% less damage, but I don't think I would ever pick that one myself. Crushing wave. This one produces Sigil of Eldrazi, deals 10% melee attack power and 128 elemental damage up to 9 enemies within 30 feet of you. I suppose this will be your main AoE spell. This is a different group. It will be a different server, and it will be different gameplay and different classes. Examples so you get this. There is a tank slayer, there is a stealth shaman, there is a stealth doc. Witch elf does not get stealth. There is a tank engineer. There is a, let's say, healer sork. There is a bow yielding chopper. So everything is different here. It's different server, different people, different gameplay. Yeah, it's a non-standard tank. You can watch my video on my YouTube course where I did the greenskins and the dwarfs. We did them together, and you can see it. Or you can come on the builder and you can check it out. But I lost a little bit of my track here. Crushing wave, and then we go White Tower Master. This is a morale 1. You generate all 4 sigils. Yes, the tank also got that one. Poised attacks tactic. Whenever you consume a sigil of Eldrazi, you will gain 20% critical chance for 8 seconds. Hoeth advancement tactic. Whenever you consume a sigil of Hoeth, up to 3 group mates within 100 feet gain 1 stack of enhanced intelligence. Again, the tactics are almost the same. Again, you can really buff your spell casting friends. The Archmage so far. We'll see what the Swordmaster does, because he gets a bit of a stealth, but I think it's a little bit different. Improved basic attack. Your basic attack now deals 75% additional damage. In comparison to, we've seen this somewhere at 300%. I think was it this one? Anyways, we've seen somewhere. Your basic attack, if you max this one out, does 225% additional damage. Basic attacks is going to be important because it's the one skill you're going to have to use when you don't have all the other fancy stuff. And it's also the one that produces your action points. So I feel at this point, without playing the game yet, that you might actually need to have this buff so you deal a lot of damage while you generate your action points. Yes, cost. Yes, just go on the builder here and have a look. Here, I'll give you the link so you can go and have a look. Okay, go and check them out. They're all up here. So. Oh, I just realized that on the stream you don't see my pointer, but that's okay. You can see the tooltips. So we were here. This is wounds. Blurring shock. This one produces a sigil of Asurian, deals 28% spell attack power, 358 elemental damage to target enemy. If you have an Eldrazi sigil, you deal 25% more damage, and if you have a sigil of Hoeth, now has a range of 65 foot from 30. Now, you don't need to have those to cast the spell. You need 75 action points, and you can just deal damage to the target enemy, and you will generate the Asurian sigil. If you have the other two, just get the extra bonuses. Hey, Idrith, thanks for the sub and the support, dude. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Hi, welcome. Also, Idrith, as you know, it has the one and only depository for add-ons for Warhammer Online, regardless which server you play. So make sure you pay a visit to Idrith's website and check out if you need any add-ons. And of course, you can always buy Idrith a cup of coffee because he has been doing this for at least 10 years for us. Wall of Darting Steel, Morale 2. You gain 100% dodge for the duration. So the same one as the tank, 100% dodge. Next line, Eagle Protection Tactic. Eagle Flight will now apply an 8-second enchantment to your defensive target for the duration. They will absorb up to 13% restoration power and 173 damage. Bedazzle. Passive, increase the duration of Dazzling Blades by 2. Exactly the same as the tank version we've seen 2 minutes ago. Master of the Blades, career tactic. Your Eldrajor and Vol skills deal 50% more damage, but your Hoeth and Asurian skill deal 25% less. That reminds me a lot of the Archmage, like your healing spell do less healing, but your damage. So you could specialize in specific sigils as a DPS. Harmonic deities, harmonic deities, passive. And scroll below has a 10% chance to also generate a sigil of Hoeth. Okay, that's good. So you can have 2 sigils going on. That's why it gives you this tactic. You can kind of like choose and pick stuff. Phoenix Wing. This one generates a sigil of Vol, deals 8% melee attack power and 115 spiritual damage, up to 9 enemies within 30 feet of you. Now, if you have a sigil of Eldrajor active as well, applies a 9-second affliction to its enemy hit, which deals 3% spell attack power and 12 spiritual damage every 3 seconds. If you have a sigil of Hoeth active as well, because you have 4 sigil active for 15 seconds before they go away, you interrupt its target. So you can convert this Phoenix Wing attack into a direct damage to 9 enemies AoE. AoE is also direct damage, and it's important some things say when you receive direct damage or you deal direct damage to an enemy, this happens. It's an area for 9 people, 30 feet, and you can also apply a dot, and you can also interrupt everybody. So it is a powerful thing to have, and I'm going to click it just because I can. Next line, stopping strikes. I think we've seen this on the tank version, on the tank hard specialization as well. Dazzling Blade, Heaven Blade, Phoenix Wing will apply stacks of reduced spiritual and elemental resistance whenever they deal periodic damage. So, Valor of Ages, tactic again. Crossing Wave, Phoenix Wing, and Shadow Blade will now hit up to 24 enemies. I would like to point out this is the DPS spec, and you can control whether you play AoE in a warband or you play single target just by switching your tactics. And I'll say again, you can switch your tactics in combat. So whether you are playing solo and you have single target tactics, and then you join a warband, whether you physically join it as, invite, or you just tag along, you can always switch to AoE. Hi, Smite. Blessing of Asurian, passive, gain 25% pushback immunity. We can put 3 points on that, I think. So you gain up to 75% pushback immunity. Long March, crushing advance, now lasts 6 seconds longer. So your speed buff, you can put 3 points and have it 8 seconds longer if you really feel like you can do that. Cosmo, I will remind you, this is not Return of Reckoning. This is Interbellum. It's a different server. It's a different game. Wings of Heaven. Gain a debuff for 5 seconds. This is a morale 3, which reduces your mass by 8, and leap forward and apply ensnare to up to 9 enemies within 20 feet of where you land. Ensnare reduces movement speed by 30%. Exactly the same as on the tank version here, on the tank path, and on the Archmage. Break Loose, Renown tactic. Movement skills you use will now remove ensnare and root it from you. So I suppose that is the crossing advance, where you also remove, you have this tactic, remove your snare and root so you can break free and move forward. Sweeping Dance, career tactic. Ether Dance will hit an additional enemy within 20 feet. Dance of Blade, 4 ranks, passive. Its dance will deal 2% additional damage for its Dazzling Blade and Heaven Blade effect on the target. Oh. So I suppose that can go all the way up to 8% additional damage if you combine all the nice little debuffs on your targets. Well, the Interbellum, the way it's designed on paper so far, because I haven't played it, some people already tested it on test phase 1 and test phase 2. Test phase 3 will be starting at some point, I suppose, in the near future. I'm sure they've been blown away as well, because from my experience on paper, a lot of things are just mind-blowing here as far as the gameplay goes. Shadow Blade, it's a skill, no cost, insta-cast. Basic attacks. Deal 1% melee, it's a basic attack as well, and it deals 1% melee attack power and 13 spiritual damage up to 9 enemies within 30 feet of you. Generates 22 action points. So you have your main basic attack that generates 22, and then you can get Shadow Blade. Also 22. If you have an active Vol sigil, you apply a 6-second alignment to its target hit. For this duration, targets take 5% melee attack power and 39 spiritual damage every 3 seconds, so an additional dot to the direct damage. If you have an Asurian sigil on, all group mates within 100 feet gain 1 stack of enhanced willpower. So the tank buffs intelligence. For spellcasters, the DPS can buff willpower, which probably is good for the tank, right? For the Swordmaster Apprentice Commander path, which use main damage through spells, so it's going to need willpower, and hopefully the healers that's going to be doing that. Unleash the Winds, that's morale 4, the same as the tank. Up to 96 enemies within 20 feet of the location you select are knocked straight up in the air. And as Ramasee said earlier, we're going to learn about the gravity stat, which kind of like determines how long they stay flying and whatever. So that's going to be fun. So basically it's another CC. Ghastling Wind. It's a basic attack, deals 4% spell attack power, 30 spiritual damage to target enemy, generates 22 action points. If you have an Asurian sigil, knock up 9 enemies within 30 feet of the target away and apply a movable to them. This effect can only happen every 20 seconds. If you do have a sigil Val, applies knockdown and unstoppable to target enemy. This effect can only happen every 20 seconds. And of course, Flames of the Phoenix. We already seen that same sort of busting ability on the Archmaids and on the tank spec of the Apprentice. You just deal damage every half a second for 3-second channel, and you apply a stack, and every stack increases the damage with 25%, and every stack lasts 1 second. And you can only do that if people don't have cover from you. Cover means they don't have a tank in front of them. All right, so that's a DPS. No offense to anyone, I was interrupted a few times to say hi and explain a few things, so I got no idea what exactly this DPS does. But I would have thought this is just doing direct damage and dots, basically, melee style. So we have seen the tank, we've seen the DPS. Now let's go have a look on the Apprentice Hard Specialization Lore Master, which is a defensive support. Let's see how the defensive support works. Of course, the mechanic is still the same, it's still the balance, is still 4 sigils that you require. Calming Wind spell, not cost 2-second cast time. It's a blade enhancement. Generates 40 action points. Applies 5-second enchantment to target ally. Absorbs 7% restoration power plus 76 damage. If you have a sigil of Asurian, grant 1 stack of enhanced hardiness and enchanted fortitude. Hardiness makes you harder to receive crits. Fortitude reduces the crit damage you receive. So you are casting a defensive enchantment enhancement on the target. If you have a Vow, a sigil absorb is 225% more effective from the original 7. So defensive support. So far we've seen the defensive part there. Dazzling Blade applies a 6-second affliction to target enemy, deals 9% spell attack power and 105 spiritual jam every 2 seconds, a nice melee dot, 45 action points, and also generates a sigil of Hoeth. Encircled Blow generates a sigil of Eldrazi, deals 21% melee attack power and 208 elemental damage. So you're pretty much going to have to alternate this. So instead of like playing a Chosen in the past and you alternate the auras, all right, you just alternate, you go melee attack, melee attack, melee attack, you build up your sigils, and then you do whatever it is you do. Dragon's Talon, again, action point required, generates a sigil of Asurian, dispel 1 enchantment from target enemy. If you have a Hoyt sigil active, also dispel 1 blessing. If you have an Eldrazi sigil on top of that, or just that anyways, also deal 21% melee attack power and 280 elemental damage. Martial Prowess. Yeah. I mean, because, you know, it's a Swordmaster / Apprentice. It's kind of, you know, I said melee. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are 65. You are correct, of course, but 65 foot for Calming Wind, 65 foot for Dazzling Blade, 8 feet for Unscrolling Blow, and 8 feet for Dragonstone. So suppose you might have to use some of them long range and do different gameplay with the closer ones, depending how that is, giving you a more versatile gameplay and also allowing you to use specific skills for longer range or closer range or something. A lot of the classes do this, like let's say the Bright Wizard, the melee Bright Wizard, has to cast from a range a couple of things, build up some mechanics and blast and dodge, and then he has to, or she has to go to melee range and start DPSing and exploding everything, including him or herself in the process. And when that mechanic runs out, the Bright Wizard, the specific melee one, has to go back out of melee range, recover, get healed, and start doing the ranged stuff again. Same thing for the Chopper, for example. He starts using the bow far away, he runs out of magical energy, he has to go into melee range, DPS, build up his magical energy, and then he can stay there or go further back and use the ranged one, runs out, goes back. A lot of classes have that. There's always a mechanic to that you need to do to balance one or the other, or move forward and backwards, or generate resources or something like that. Martial Prowess generates a Sigil of Elderzor, grants target ally 1 stack of enhanced weapon skill and enhanced initiative. Etheric Dissipation generates a Sigil of Hoeth, applies silence, that is your silence. Eagle Flight generates a Sigil of Hoeth, deals 30% spell attack power and 420 spiritual damage to target enemy, and that's it. Cerulean Shield, this is your absorb, gains an enchantment for 8 seconds. You will absorb 22% restoration power in 298 over the duration. Tactics, sensitive training is the same, 4 ranks is the same. Potent enchantments, I think this is the same one as the tanks, and the same as the Swordmaster as well. And Bound in Blue, also the same, which I think this is a tactic we'll see the elves use a lot because they give shields to the entire group. Whether you're a DPS, a support DPS, or a tank, that tactic just kicks ass. The defense support equips staffs. So the tank is sword and board, the DPS is two-handed, and the defensive support uses staffs. The default morale to start with, morale 1, you get returned to life, is the main resurrection. There is no resurrection spell. Every resurrection is a morale 1 so far, if I remember. Focus Mind, which increases your cast time. You cast faster 50%, and you also receive 100% pushback immunity. Divine Protection, all group mates within 15, all group mates with 100 feet for 15 seconds. They get an absorb for 120 of your restoration power and 1600 damage over the duration of that enchantment of the buff. Alter Fate removes all affliction and cripples and resurrects everybody on your group in 100 feet. And that's how you start on the defensive support Lore Master. Let's go and see how it differs from the other 2 hard specializations. Some random stats there. Balance Singing. It has 4 ranks as a passive. Your shields have 5% chance not to be spent. If you maxed out, you have a 20% chance your shields not to be spent. It's a significant percentage, 20%. Definitely will help you. I think it will help to spam some stuff. Water Rash tactic. This action point, the action point cost of your skills is reduced by 33% on allies that are lower than 40%. Okay, maybe. Not every class, no. The tank doesn't have it, but the defensive support, being a melee, because this is a Swordmaster, that's how you know it anyway, because now it's called an Apprentice. The defensive support, because it has tank, DPS, and defensive support, it can resurrect through morale. The healers also have a morale 1 to resurrect. The healers don't have a resurrection spell. They need morale to resurrect you. So if somebody dies in combat, if they don't have morale, because they just use the morale 3 or 4 or whatever, you're pretty much fucked. There's no, oh, let me get you. You gotta have to wait. And then we have some more stats here. You can pick up more stats if you want to. Phoenix Wing, 75 action points, generates a Sigil of All, deals 8% melee attack power, 115 spiritual damage up to 9 enemies within 30 feet. Eldrazi sigil, if you have it, applies 9-second affliction. That's a dot, and if you have a Hoeth, interrupts its target. So your AoE also becomes an AoE interrupt, depending what sigils you have active. You generate or sigils, that's a morale 1. Every swordmaster gets this one. Asurian celerity. Career tactic. Whenever you consume a sigil of Asuran, your next 2 spells cast within 8 seconds have a 0.5 second faster cast time. Nice. In combat, reses are all adrenaline skills. Yeah. Blessing of Asurian. Passive, 25% pushback immunity. It has 4 ranks. You can put points into this. You can get 100% immunity pushback. Hoeth advancement, career tactic. Whenever you consume a sigil of Hoeth, up to 3 group mates with 100 feet gain 1 stack of enhanced intelligence. Again, for the casters. Actually, not the casters, because the tank is doing spell damage. So it could require intelligence, or it could require willpower for restoration. It depends. It's we'll see which one is better, but if you have Bright Wizard, though, you can still buff him. Blessings of Heaven. It's a spell, 65 action points, generates a sigil of Asuran. Dispel 1 affliction from target ally. If you also have a sigil of Hoeth, also dispel a cripple. If you have a sigil of Aldrinor on top of the other 2, target gains 8-second enchantment, and for that duration, they will be healed for 6% of your restoration power and 68 points each time they hit an enemy with an ability. Now, if we choose this, we also unlock Improved Blessing of Heaven with 2 ranks and a passive. Blessing of Heaven will apply up to an additional groupmate within 65 feet of you, and you can do that up to 2 additional groupmates, where you can dispel 1 affliction from your ally and also give them a hot to heal. You're a defensive support. Eagle's Protection, career tactic. Eagle Flight now applied an 8-second enchantment to your defensive target. For the duration, they will absorb up to 13% restoration power plus 173 damage. Another shield you can provide to your defensive target as a defensive support. Mass Dissipation, career tactic. Etheric Dissipation no longer generates a sigil, but will hit 8 additional enemies within 65 feet. Again, you can control if you play AoE or single target without having to change your spec. You're still going to be a defensive support, but you can, if you're playing a small group, you can be a single target providing support. And then if you join a warband, you don't have to go and respec to AoE, you just send your tactics. I like that the AoE is kind of controlled through the tactics, so you don't have to go through the trouble of, let me go and change my entire thing and come back. You just click and that's it. Engage, it's a passive. Enemies that you deal direct damage to will have their outgoing damage reduced by 2% for 5 seconds. It has 3... Oh, hold on a second. I skipped the line. Sorry, my bad. I cannot do that. Martial Mastery. Martial Prowess will apply to all group mates within 65 feet. That one was... Which one was Martial Prowess? Where was that thing? Oh, there we go. Grants target ally 1 stack of enhanced weapon skill and enhanced initiative. So with this tactic applies to all group mates, so you help everybody. Whispering Wind, 2.5 second cast time, produces a sigil of all, applies an 8-second enchantment to target ally. For the duration, absorbs 60% restoration power and 801 damage. If you have an Eldrazi sigil, applies to an ally within 30 feet, to an extra ally within 30 feet, and a Hoeth applies, if you have a sigil of Hoeth, applies as a 15-second blessing instead of an 8-second blessing. So 2 buffing stats so far as defensive support and 2 shields, if I remember. The White Bulwark has 5 ranks and passive. All your absorbed effects are 6% more effective. If we max this out, it's 32%. We've got 2 shields to share. Because don't forget, we also have Bound in Blue. So Cerulean Shield goes to the group mates within 65 feet. That's 1 shield. Then this one is also an Absorb, the Whispering Wind. And we just made both of them 30% more effective. Again, we are defensive support. We support the group with extra defenses. Eagles protection, we've seen it. Mass dissipation, we've seen it. Engage. Enemy. Okay, this is the one I just read about, you reducing the outgoing damage from your enemies, the ones you're dealing direct damage. It has 3 ranks, therefore enemies you deal direct damage to, they have the outgoing damage reduced by 6% for 5 seconds. Therefore, your group will receive less damage from anyone you hit. And if your AoE is still direct damage, AoE is not considered something else, it's still direct damage, so you can keep constantly reducing the incoming damage to your group. So your shields and damage reduction. Tats by the Ever Queen, passive with 3 ranks. Whenever you consume a sigil, you restore 3% restoration power and 35 health to all group mates within 65 feet. I'm gonna have to get some points from somewhere else. So if we max this one out, whenever you use a sigil, and pretty much as you have seen, most of the skills require 2 or 3 sigils in order to have the full effect. If you play this right and you can control that, so you'll be able to restore 9%, whatever that is, from your restoration power stat, plus 105 health to all group mates within 65 feet. So now you not only give them stats, you don't only give them shields and reduce the incoming damage, you also heal them as a melee support DPS. Adept movements, carrier tactic. Your absorb effect from Cerulean Shield, Eagle's Protection, Heaven's Blade, Whispering Winds, and Volt's Buffer grants you 10% dodge. That's a nice tactic for you to kind of like get less incoming damage from ranged. Wings of Heaven is the morale 3, which you leap forward. You reduce movement speed by 30% for 60 seconds. It looks like every elf has that one. Dissipation Expert is a renowned tactic. Whenever you use an ability that removes a buff or debuff, you will gain 50% adrenaline per second. It's a morale buff, self-morale buff. Graceful Strike, that's a new one. 50 action points insta-cast. It generates a sigil of Asurian, applies staggered and unstoppable to target enemy. If you have an Elder Honor sigil, hits 2 other enemies within 30 feet. And if you have a sigil of Hoeth, increase your range to 130 feet from 65. So it's a stagger for a single target, and if you have the extra sigil, 2 more enemies within 30 feet. Ooh. Hello, Mr. Thainlorn. How are we doing? Hello. Restoration Protections, passive. Your absorbs have a 5% chance to apply 1 stack of enhanced healing received. So 50%. So the 2 or 3 absorbs that we have will also increase the incoming healing from the healers to the group. I think this might actually be the best defensive support, as I remember. I think this might be the best because it gives you shields, it gives you stats, it gives you healing, and now it also increases your incoming healing. I mean, I'm sure the Death Society has one like this, but I don't remember it. But I kind of like it now that I'm seeing this because it's been a while. Turbulent Winds, carrier tactic. Whenever you cast Dragon's Talon or Blessing of Heaven, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. Second morale buff tactic. In addition, each enemy you hit with Unleash the Winds will have their outgoing damage reduced by 20% for 10 seconds. 20% I know sounds a lot for 10 seconds, but you have to use a morale 3. This is Wings of Heaven. Sorry, Unleash the Winds is where is it? If I remember, it is a morale one. Just gotta find it. Oh, it's here. Unless the winds, it's a morale 4. That's why it's 20% damage reduction for 10 seconds. It takes a while to build, so kind of compensate. Turbulent Winds. No, I was looking for Unleash the Winds. That's the one I was looking. It's here. It was the next one I was going to do. So you hit up to 96 enemies within 20 feet of the location you select, and you knock them up straight up in the air. So it's kind of like an interrupt with a damage reduction if you have the tactic, but it is a morale 4. This one, so that's it. And then we have here Gifts of Isha, 100 action points. 300 is the total you have. Applies a 5-second blessing to target ally for the duration. Absorb up to 35% restoration power. So that's the third or the fourth shield we can give to people. And 476 damage. Consumes all sigils and applies to another target per sigil consumed. So if you have 4 sigils active and you do this one, it is 1 plus 4. That's 5 allies that can get the massive shield. And I say massive because 35% of your restoration power, but it's 500 damage. It's a lot of shielding. So I think it's 4 shields we can give, plus the healing, plus the stat increase. And of course, Flames of the Phoenix, I'm not even going to bother because we already said this 6 times today. And that concludes the Apprentice, which you also know as the Swordmaster, with the 3 hard specializations of Commander, which is Tank, Swordmaster, which is DPS, and Loremaster, which is Defensive Support. If it wasn't for the whole Sigil situation, which, as Ramasee said, is one of the most difficult classes to play, and I can see why. I think the Defensive Support, it's I love things that don't just heal you, that play with shields and mitigation and stuff like that. So if you like that as well, and you're bored of it, I just heal you, and you like the Swordmaster playstyle, the Defensive Support is going to be super useful. Because even if the healer goes down and the other healer wants time to build morale 1 to resurrect in combat, a Defensive Support Loremaster, right? A Loremaster, which is a defensive support, it can really help mitigate a lot of damage, having the ability to give shields up to 4 or 5 people, and keep doing that, and give them a few hots. It can really compensate, partially, for a lost healer until he's back in the game. So now I can see, now that I'm reading this again, because it's been a while since we had something released on the builder here, how, because we had this worry here on the stream, right? That, yeah, who's going to play defensive support? Who's going to play offensive? Everybody's going to be a DPS, a tank, and a healer, and those defensive, offensive supports in between, they're just going to be pushed to the side because who cares? But it's clear that you have a DPS, it can just deal damage. So if one or two of your healers go down, since there isn't as easy to resurrect as it is on Return of Reckoning or Flame of War, the original game, you need something in your composition to buy you time, right, to do that. And a defensive support can do that. 4 shields, healing, increase of stats, and reduce an incoming damage from anybody he hits. And he's the AoE. He's hitting 9 people, reducing the damage, the incoming damage, but 6% constantly. So defensive supports, or if you want more aggressive profile, offensive supports, it's going to be in there. We'll find the balance eventually, but I can see how people would like to play this for the benefit of the group, 1, and 2, it's also an interesting gameplay because those shields also apply to you. Like if you play solo, you have 4 shields, a heal, a self-heal, and a resurrect for other people and things like that. So it would make interesting gameplay. Right, so we finished the Archmage, which it has a healer, an offensive support, and another healer, a hot healer, and a standard healer if you like, more heavy on that, and defensive support. And then we have the Apprentice, which is a Swordmaster, which has a tank, DPS, and defensive support.